All right, so here we are, Self-Made Millionaire Tips. I'm Colin Plume, CEO of Noble Gold Investments, My Digital Money founder, Tumi Coco, the new best, healthiest hot sauce in the world that's coming out soon that everyone's going to get to try. And I'm here today to talk to some really exciting people to talk about something that's prevalent. It's in the zeitgeist. People are talking about this a lot. And Leif and Kathleen own a company that helps you live and invest overseas. And I think everybody's seen this. They've seen articles about it. They've seen it. You guys have written a book about it. And there's another book coming out. But yeah, just tell me how, I know you're in Panama right now and you go from Panama to Paris, but tell me how this sort of came about that you were traveling a lot and then decided that you wanted to live in different places. Tell me how the origin of this business came about.
Well, I guess there are two tracks, and it's all, the honest answer is it's all accidental for me. I'll tell my story. Leif may have a completely different answer. For me, it's completely accidental. I wanted to be a writer. So I studied English literature in college. I graduated. I took a job with the only publishing house in town in Baltimore at the time I was looking for a job as a very entry-level editor. And it turned out that that publishing house named Agora, which still exists and today is a very big company. When I started, they were tiny. The owner of Agora had a big interest in living and investing overseas. This is almost 40 years ago. So this is before it was the kind of idea you're describing, kind of in the zeitgeist. 40 years ago, this was a very fringy idea. Nobody really talked about this. This was pre-globalization. But
Yeah.
Bill had these ideas about going overseas, starting businesses overseas, traveling. He wanted to own property overseas. And I got caught up in that. And I realized really quickly that all appealed to me. And I started traveling for work, for business, and writing about it. And I found that this was a way to be a writer and be in publishing while discovering the world in a way that had never occurred to me before. So it was my first job out of college that very accidentally introduced me to all these ideas.
Fantastic. I mean, what a dream to be able to travel and write. Tell me your side, Leif. Obviously, totally different. I'm sure it's on a
yeah, a bit. So I was actually a reader of the publication. Kathy was the editor of. But going back a bit, I knew I didn't want to be sitting in an office doing CPA work. From a young age, I worked for a CPA in high school and college, and wanted to do things overseas. So I went to Thunderbird for which is they've changed their name, but it's the International Management graduate school, and got my first job out of there working for a drilling company, and got sent to places where you don't want to go overseas. I got sent back to the States, and then decided I wanted to look at going overseas again. And that's when I went on a tour of Ireland that Kathy was putting on, and that's where we met. So that's where our story begins, and that's actually the first book that she wrote about our time in Ireland. And I had ideas for doing real estate investing in Ireland that didn't work out for various reasons. And so helped her get the business that she was setting up established in Ireland with my background in accounting and human resources and finance. And it went from there.
Again, really, really organic and accidental. One decision leading to another, but never. The truth is, not really much of it planned.
There was no master plan.
There was no master plan.
Much of what we've done.
Well, let's start with it because we talked about some questions before, but I wanted to go through one of the questions that I thought was really interesting, kind of out of the box. What's the worst place to live? I mean, just tell me where is it awful?
You lived in some of the worst places.
Give me your worst places to live.
So for out of the places I've spent time living or working, the drilling fields in Chad and Kazakhstan were the worst. Kazakhstan, I was there for just a month, thank goodness, for Christmas relief for the manager who was there permanently. But it was December, and Western Kazakhstan in the Tengiz oil field, the eastern side of the Caspian Sea. In December, it gets to minus 50. So we had to wake up every night to start your car. They were Hungarian versions of the old Suzuki Samurais, but they had chokes. This is how primitive they were. This was 1993 or 94. And so I forgot to wake up in the middle of the night one night, and sure enough, went out there, the engine block was frozen. Fortunately, there was staff, I could call somebody, but it took an hour to get it organized. And I'm from Arizona, so minus anything is not good for me, but minus 50 was ridiculous, except it was 110 inside. The heat inside was so good because they had all the gas in the world right at their doorstep. They could heat whatever they wanted to. That was the worst place. Chad wasn't much better. Middle of nowhere in a camp, with nothing to do around there. So like I said, oil is generally not where humans should be spending time for the most part.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, -50. I'm sure that would be a pretty miserable place, and not on my bucket list of places that I need to go. So you guys are in Ireland, and you decide to start a business to help people.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you because, in fact, I went to Ireland with the Agora. So Agora sent me to. So up until this point, Leif and I are very different stories. He was living in Chicago, working as CFO for a hotel company. I was in Baltimore working for this publishing company, which sent me to Ireland to open an office for them, their first EU office. It was, again, part of Bill's globalization diversification strategy, and he wanted an office in the EU, sent me to Ireland. And the reason I went to Ireland was because of a failed office romance. And so it was definitely, that's the truth of it. I needed a big change, and this was offered, and I thought, yep, this is what I need to do. I need to be out of Baltimore. I need a fresh start. I've always wanted to live in Europe. Well, since I've been introduced to Europe and this idea of the old world, it's hugely appealing to me. So this chance to live in Ireland, I jumped at it. And right at the start of that process where I was going to open the office for Agora, that's when Leif and I met.
Right. So we were in Ireland, setting up, running this company that really was doing the same thing we talk about in our company now. And then we moved to Paris from Ireland after about 7 years, mostly because our daughter wanted to do a year in school in Paris. She ended up finishing high school in Paris. And then while we were in Paris, we left Agora. We were both working for them by that point. We left Agora, and Kathy decided one day that she wanted her own publishing company. And so that's how Millionaires Overseas got started. At that point, we looked around the world and said, okay, well, where's the best place to set up this business that we want to set up? And we knew Paris wasn't it. You don't want to have employees in Paris. The taxes, the attitude,
the French don't embrace the idea of entrepreneurship.
Is that true? That's
true. Yeah.
Generally speaking, I mean, you don't want employees. They embrace entrepreneurship, but all the entrepreneurs we know in France are, just self-employed people with maybe they have 1 or 2 employees, but having employees in France is not a fun thing.
It's a high payroll tax, or there's a lot of leave. What exactly makes Paris a bad place?
Both of those things, but it's the thing is it's cultural. To the French, the employer is the enemy for employees. And it took us a while to realize this. We had employees, we had an office in Paris for years, and finally realized that no matter how hard we tried, how fair we were, how, we were trying to be good employers, it was not going to work because we were seen as the enemy. And it's a cultural thing. There are hotlines, tip lines in France that employees can call if they have any grievance, any complaint they want to file.
They can get free legal employment advice by calling the hotline. And we had the first and really only employee we had under Agora there, for what we were running. You hire someone with a 6-month probationary period, and the girl was great. She was lovely, came to work on time every day, did her job, great attitude, until 6 months and 1 day. And then it was Jekyll and Hyde. It was crazy. And she was calling, she would say, why don't you like me? Like, what do you mean, why don't we like you? We don't like you or not like you. You're here to do a job. We're not here to be your friend. Right. It turned into crazy conversations.
So it's not to be anti-French at all, because we love the French, for the record. We love being in France. We love Paris is our favorite place to be, but it's not a place to start a business in our experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, certain places you love but you don't want to live there. You don't want to be there. Just it's great for that. Hawaii, like I go for a week or two. It's great, but I know, I wouldn't want to be there forever. It's just even though the people are there are amazing. All right. So you don't want to open a business in France. So you're like, what's the next step? And then you decide on Panama.
Decided on Panama, and that was because so a year before I decided to leave Agora, who had been working for Agora by this time for some time, decided to leave and do his own thing as well, his own real estate development. And he chose Panama as the place for that. And that was when he bought Los Islotes. So the purchase of Los Islotes, which is a piece of land we own on the Pacific coast here in the Veraguas province of Panama, that goes back all this time, 15 years ago. Leaf bought that land, and then a year later, I decided to leave and start my own thing. And since Leaf's focus was now Panama, and we knew Panama did make sense from a doing business perspective, that's how we ended up kind of all in on Panama.
So tell me why Panama. Tell me the benefits of moving, starting a business. Obviously you're building out this high end. I'm assuming you're going to sell off the homes that you're building. What are some of the benefits of these types of ventures in Panama?
So, two big things for Panama is location. So it's called the hub of Americas for a reason. You can fly, well, at this point, especially 15 years later, but even when we first moved here, you could fly to pretty much every major city in the Americas directly from Panama on one airline or another. But Copa is the airline here that you can now fly to even secondary cities directly in North America. So getting around the region, very easy. And Panama uses the US dollar, so it's easier to budget as well from a business perspective. And it's fairly easy to get English speaking staff here, which is, we write in English and run our business in English. So that was critical for us. So,
and then there can be tax benefits,
right,
depending on the business you're in and how you're earning and where you're earning your money. There can be big tax benefits.
Yeah, tell me comparative to where I am in the US. Like, what are the big tax benefits?
So Panama taxes jurisdictionally. So income earned in Panama is taxed in Panama, but income earned outside of Panama isn't. So for an American, it's less of an attraction because you're going to pay taxes to Uncle Sam or file a tax return and likely pay some taxes anyway. Regardless. For businesses, our business structure, initially it was great because US controlled foreign corporations could defer taxes on profits until they were paid out in one form or another. But Trump changed that in 2017, trying to get taxes out of Google, Amazon, and Apple and all those others, but it affected a lot of entrepreneurs like us as well. So that specific tax benefit is no longer around, but we're still eligible for, it's complicated and we can talk about taxes some other time, but
well, I guess
we're still eligible for what qualifies as a discount on the corporate tax
there's
rate.
this thing called the foreign earned income exclusion.
Well, that's personal.
That's for us personally, yeah. And so for any American who would come to a jurisdiction like Panama, you can take advantage of this, and the amount of that is $112,000 a year, something.
Yeah, it goes up every year, but it's around.
It's right. Of income you can earn before you owe taxes in the States. So if you're living in a country like Panama, where you're earning your money outside the country, you don't owe taxes in Panama on that income, and you don't owe taxes in the United States on that income up to 112,000 more or less. If you're living outside if you're not a legal resident of the States,
if you qualify those technical.
So it gets complicated, but the bottom line is you can earn a very good living tax-free as an individual running a laptop business, for example, or being a freelance writer or
there might be people, expats that or people from different places all over the world that are retired and they get income. If they're not a US citizen, maybe they can shelter a lot of that. It sounds like as long as they're not from the US, they could shelter a lot in Panama is what it seems.
For non-Americans, Panama and really all of Central America, most Central American countries are jurisdictional taxation countries. For retirees from Europe, for example, it's great. They pay no taxes on their pension incomes living in Panama, for example.
Canadians too. Right?
Canadians, they have to disconnect themselves from Canada, but it's possible as well.
And let's just talk cost of living in Panama relative to like what is a 1 bedroom apartment? What's food? What's healthcare? I mean, I've read things, but it seems to be pretty substantially less than some of the other places.
Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective, honestly. So you're in California on the West Coast.
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Okay, so everything's cheaper compared to Los Angeles, right? The whole world. If you're coming from Iowa, Panama maybe not so much, but if you compare apples to apples, Panama City is a coastal city, an international city, great restaurants. It's going to be cheaper than major cities in the US. It's mostly compared to Miami. But
And it's really similar to Miami.
there's plenty of $1 million apartments that you can find in Panama City.
Sure.
But those same apartments are going to be probably multi-million-dollar apartments in Los Angeles or Miami.
Right. So for our readers, we try to frame it as Panama City is no longer a super cheap place to live or retire, but elsewhere in Panama, the rest of Panama can be for sure. So we call it thin slicing. So it has to do with, talking about moving to Panama. Well, you're not really moving to Panama any more than you're moving, say, to the United States. What does it cost to live in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
There's no answer to that question. What's Manhattan versus Des Moines versus
Right.
Los Angeles? So it's the same here, Panama City versus where we are on the Baragos Coast versus, a half dozen other places in the country that are really interesting, offer interesting, appealing lifestyles for a retiree, for example, or even someone much younger. And they can be way, way cheaper than in the States.
But even in Panama City, I mean, we live in the expat world in Panama City, which is not the low end world. But there's a real estate agent here who just recently sent me an opportunity to buy a small building, 14-unit building, and it's in a good neighborhood. It's a relatively new building, less than 20 years old, doesn't have any real amenities, but you can. He's planning on buying these, renovating them, flipping them. So these 130 square meters, so 1,400 square foot apartments for $150,000, $160,000 in a good neighborhood where you can walk to restaurants. The building we live in, they're 1 bedroom apartments of about 100 square meters, so 1,100 square feet. And they have water views. They're on the main road. They're near everything, easy access. $250,000. So
you can have an ocean view apartment for $250,000, which I think most people would say that's a very attractive price. I mean, the starter home where we are in Los Angeles, that would be like 900 square feet, 1,000 square feet, and in a not great area, just average, is probably $900,000.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. To give you an idea, that's very
that's great perspective. We're a little defensive on this subject because often readers say that we exaggerate how affordable a place can be.
Sure.
So we try to hedge it every way. But you're right. That's a great perspective.
But it depends on the perspective you're coming from, right? If you're coming from Des Moines, where you can buy actually where my mother lives in Illinois, she has a 4-bedroom Victorian house that's about 1,600 square feet. And if she sold it, it'd be about $250,000. So you're talking about, a nice old house with a basement and attic and 4 bedrooms for the same price as our 1-bedroom apartment here in Panama. But we have an ocean view and we have better weather.
I mean, listen, Illinois, I was in Chicago. I think I was in the 1 week that they had decent weather, and I was talking to people in Chicago, and they were telling me how bad the weather is, like 90% of the year. So I don't think you can compare. I mean, quality of life is weather. Quality of life is how busy the town is. It is access to good food, quality food, or food that's interesting,
right?
Around interesting. I mean, that's all a factor in my mind, is to where somebody would want quality of life. So tell me, who's pandemic? A lot of people were moving, they're packing up. Where were the people that you guys were? Where were they coming from mostly? Where were a lot of your readers? Where did you see the biggest exodus of people for you guys?
So, the majority of our readers are Americans and Canadians. So 98% are probably Americans and Canadians, with Americans being the vast majority of that. And they were, our biggest pockets of interest are in the high cost areas in the U.S. So California, Texas,
Florida.
the Chicago area, Florida, the Northeast, the Seattle area. And because, you know, if you sell that $900,000 starter home in Los Angeles that we were just talking about, you
You can buy a penthouse on the water here.
Well, you can buy a nice apartment here in Panama, live off the rest, right?
Right.
But so there were definitely people moving during the pandemic. It was interesting. You know, people didn't think they could do anything at all, but there were a lot of people talking to us over that time. And at the time, they were mostly moving to Portugal. Portugal's been a big destination the last 10, 15 years. And you could, once you got despite the movement restrictions for Americans going to Europe, once you got your residency visa from the Portuguese consulate, that allowed you to get on a plane to go, if you could find one, but to get on a plane to go to Portugal and then apply for your residency. So Portugal was a popular destination. A lot of people were going to Mexico because it's close and easy, and residency is fairly easy.
Right.
Less so to Panama. Panama had a pretty hard pandemic shutdown. Women could go out Monday, Wednesday, Fridays for 2 hours for their shopping and whatnot. Men could go out Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays for 2 hours. And a lot of Saturdays were stopped just to have the whole weekend shut down. So men got screwed in that deal. But for about 9 to 12 months, but we weren't here. We got stuck in the pandemic in Paris.
Which was okay. That was not a bad place to be.
Wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And that gets to how we've evolved our lives. We could go anywhere. We ended up living in Ireland long enough to get Irish passports. So we have EU passports, we have American passports, and we have Panama residency. So we could have come back to Panama anytime with our residency status, but chose not to because of the shutdown here. So we bounced back and forth between Europe and the US for most of 2020, and then finally came back to Panama in early 2021 when
if I got stuck in Paris during the pandemic, I would have been 400 pounds. I'll tell you that right now. With all that cheap, I would have been, I mean, it was 2-3 months there of just wine and cheese at our house. That's we have young kids. And so it was sort of a crazy time at our house, but a beautiful time too. I think one of the best times for our family to all be home. Tell me about, as an American, where can I go to not have all these tax issues that, is there any reprieve anywhere in the country if I have income still derived here in the US?
No, not really. There's ways to structure it, and we just had a conference last month about asset protection and structuring your business and things to minimize the tax impact. It's not easy. But if you go offshore, if you have an online business or whatever, and you go offshore and your income still derived from the U.S., there are some benefits from that still. The biggest one, frankly, is if you go offshore, you have an offshore company, and that's who's paying you, you can end up effectively opting out of Social Security. So if your company is a foreign corporation paying you, then you can save the Social Security taxes, both sides of it. That's one big benefit.
So for an American, I guess one of the other benefits of going to Panama would be quality of life, obviously, like, selling your property, let's say the $900,000 house, and buying a, ocean view place and putting some money in your pocket too. But, you bought a big piece of land that you're developing. So you're looking at apartment buildings. So you think there's some real estate opportunities there. You were talking about that 14-unit apartment building that was $140,000 a door or something like that. What kind of return can you make? Like, what's the cap rate on an apartment there in Panama?
That particular deal, they're projecting a 7% yield at current rents. The rents are low, so they haven't done the full performance on that. But real estate is one of the things that I do here at Live Invest Overseas. And we have real estate newsletters and things like that, and just about to launch an actual overseas real estate fund with some guys in January. So I'm seeing all sorts of deals all over the place, and you can find good deals anywhere. In Panama, the one downside, so you gotta pay attention to the market. Panama City, you can't do short-term rentals under 45 days. The hotel industry has got a law put in place for that. So, and there's other places that have similar restrictions, so you gotta pay attention to that. But you can find, good yielding opportunities, north of 7-8% in many places.
Good. That's good.
Panama being one of them.
That's a good return. I mean, I look at just a little bit about before I got into precious metals and some of the other things, I was a commercial real estate agent. So I sold shopping centers, apartment buildings in Los Angeles and all over the country. And I look at deals every day, and you're not finding deals at that return. You're looking at maybe 5-6%, but you're looking at 5-6% with 6.5 to 7% debt right now. So
right.
That's obviously a big hurdle that you're, negative kind of coming out of the gate. So tell me about this, the big project that brought you guys there, the big 5-star, the dream project. You bought a piece of land, 14, 15 years ago, you're developing it. Tell me about the vision there and like what the expectation is for that property.
So it's at this point, it's become a project of love more than anything else.
And legacy.
It's
become our legacy project
for the kids. So we have a huge house out there overlooking the ocean. And we're selling lots and offering to build certain models for people, or they can do a custom house if they like. But the main goal out there is quality. Frankly, we're not building to the local standards as some of the other, as I call them, gringo developers are in the region, and with good infrastructure. But really, it's the location. That part of Panama is beautiful, and it's also
unique.
Unique, but remote. And most people think of the term remote as a negative thing. I think of it as a positive thing. It means there's not a lot of people around me out there, so I have my privacy. And even within the gated community, if it was all built out, the way the land is structured, you practically wouldn't know that your neighbor is there because of the hills and the trees and things. So
the idea is we're trying to build a community, like-minded people who appreciate this very remarkable, extraordinarily beautiful spot that the world doesn't know exists. Much of Panama is not familiar with this part of their country and don't even know it when you name it and have never been there. And the rest of the world doesn't know this part of Panama at all. And we're a little reluctant to change that. It's become very conflicting for us because Leaf bought the land originally with the very direct objective of developing it for profit. As a real estate investor, he bought the land and had a master plan in mind that was very conventional approach to what do you do with a beautiful piece of beachfront property to make money from it.
Right.
But then as we got into it, we realized, well, this is not going to be so easy to make money out here because it is so remote, so far ahead of the path of progress.
It requires the right person with the right mindset.
But then we realized the more we got into it, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's okay that this develops very slowly and in a very controlled way. And that's, for me, what it's become about now. It's legacy for our kids and grandkids. Our first grandchild is 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it's also about protection, about preserving what I think is a really special part of the world. And there aren't too many places like this left in the world. And so I feel like we're very fortunate. We're kind of blessed to be in this position where we could help to have a say in how it's developed so that it's developed for better, not worse,
right.
Which is unfortunately what happens. I've been in this business for almost 40 years, and a big part of this business has been looking at real estate development along the coasts of Central America, the Caribbean, and most of it is for the worse. Most of the development doesn't leave the place better. That's the reality. And I've watched this play out too many places in this part of the world. And so we're trying to help that a little in our tiny little way.
And I think that's great to think about it more, about the earth and how you're going to leave it, obviously, and you want to enjoy it and let your kids enjoy it. Most developers are not thinking about legacy. I can tell you that they're trying to line their pockets. So I commend you guys for thinking about taking care of this this piece of land. So you are selling some lots, or you're not going to sell
We
some?
are, we're trying.
We'll happily sell those. We've sold some lots. We've got people who, want to build. But it's the attraction of Panama over the years has been it's less expensive than the States. So people come down and okay, you can buy, an ocean. And our lots aren't the cheapest on the coast, but they're also bigger and anyway, the property's just nicer. But you can buy an ocean view lot for as low as $80,000, and you can build a house to the quality standards and style that we're expecting out there. Or I just saw a quote from someone who sent his construction plans in. I think it worked out to be 1,400 square meters, so call it 130, 140, $150 a square foot. But they're building more square feet than they can afford. That's their budget. Their budget doesn't meet the $350,000 build budget. They have 200,000, and so they're trying to figure out how to deal with that.
Wait, so they can build for $130, $140 a foot?
Yeah, and good.
And it's a high standard. Yeah, it's a high standard of construction. Yeah,
I couldn't build a he shed out here for like less than $250 a foot out where I mean that's an extraordinary.
If you could get the permit for it, right?
True.
So yeah, again, that's the thing. People coming to Panama are mostly looking for a less expensive lifestyle, and if they're coming from the middle, they can get a better quality of life for the same or less. But we're building something that's a step above what a lot of people are looking for.
Well, and you guys have a newsletter. You guys on your website that it's a daily newsletter. Live and invest overseas. Wow, that's a daunting task to send out a daily. So you guys are providing a lot of information. Obviously, it's a big move for anyone to move for where they grew up or their life. So you're trying to just give them as much education on the process as possible. And then do you guys actually help them with the paperwork to if they do decide, do you guys go all the way that far, or how, or do you just?
For the most part, no. So we offer a lot of different publishing services. So the free e-letters, which are very general and broad, but then we get way more specific in the subscription services, books, manuals. We have a couple of courses on how to retire overseas. And then we put on conferences, maybe 10 conferences a year. And at these, we get very serious about the how to and, really more hand holding. And it's a lot about introductions. So at the conferences and through the publications, we introduce readers to the attorneys, real estate agents, tax advisors, residency experts who can help them with all those aspects, down to filling out the paperwork for a residency visa or to open a bank account, all those different aspects of it. And then we do offer actually 3 hand-holding services, one for Panama, one for Belize, and one for Portugal, which are really the 3 top destinations right now for people who want to have someone literally hold their hand all the way through the process. But for the most part, we're a publishing company and we produce, all different kinds of publishing products.
So you give them as much information as you can as sort of, and then people typically will learn more and then go to the conference.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, I think that's what people want. And right now, I mean, I can't even tell you how many conversations I have with people that are just fed up, but they probably don't want to go to anywhere else in the US. Like, that's the big conversation. Is it that much better in Raleigh, North Carolina? Is it that much better in outside of Dallas? Is it that much better? And I think most people think, I don't know if it's going to be that much better anywhere else in the US. So the natural conversation is to look outside and to look at opportunities. And I think now that people are working more remote, they have more opportunities to take advantage of it. And it's a conversation that a lot of people are having. So exciting. And you guys are living a very rich and full life. Panama to Paris, and it's amazing. And I'm sure your kids and the grandkids are going to be exposed to so many different interesting cultures and life, which I think is fantastic. So we have the newsletters that they can get access to for free on the website, and then you have the new book, that's about the land.
It's about Los Islotes. The new book is At Home at Los Islotes, and it tells the story of our whole experience here in Panama, moving here, starting live and invest overseas, and then finding Los Islotes, and the story of developing it, and this conflict that we're really grappling with in real time. How much do we develop it, and how much do we just try to protect it?
Right. It's a tough question. I mean, there's always, so, and you're going to get people as more houses are built, more people are going to come, they're going to, and, and I'm sure you're being selective, which is nice. You can choose and make sure it's the right fit for your community. Lastly, kind of ending up here, obviously all the links and everything to your website and a lot of good information will be there. What do you think is the next big country that is going to explode with people moving to? Where do you think? I know you said Belize, I know you said Portugal, I know Panama's big, but is there something new? Is there a country that's really opening their arms up to people all over the world that is enticing?
So I guess we started talking about Colombia, a dozen years ago, and people said we were crazy. And
right.
A lot of our readers have moved to Colombia in the last 12 years. So it's not new, but Colombia is still a very low cost, high quality of life, especially in Medellin. I wouldn't go to Bogota, focus on Medellin. But the new hot place, which isn't necessarily new to much of the world, but new to Americans, is Montenegro. It's a small little country on the Adriatic south of Croatia that's slated to enter the EU, let's say in the next 5 years, maybe. But high quality, prices are going up, but you're in Europe, you're on the Adriatic. And Montenegro, if you buy property there, you can get residency there. So it's a very straightforward transactional kind of thing. It's not a golden visa like some of the other European countries have. It's literally, that's the law. If you own property, you can get residency. So we're seeing a lot of people interested in that, but it's a small country, right? It has 400,000 or 500,000, 600,000 people.
But they are interested in attracting foreigners, retirees and otherwise. And Montenegro is really a beautiful little country. It's small, but has a very interesting history, a lovely, charming old town in Kotor, which is out like something out of Disney. You can't describe how charming and fairy tale
Disney / Game of Thrones. It's
how charming it is. And it is very Game of Thrones like the country.
Well, in fact, Montenegro, southern Croatia, that's where a lot of Game of Thrones was filmed. Yeah.
But the coastline is beautiful. And it's kind of a jet set destination. It's attracting a luxury crowd with big marinas with luxury yachts parked, but it's very affordable. So for a window,
relatively speaking,
I think for an extended window, Montenegro is a lot of bang for your buck. You're buying a very, very high standard of living for a very affordable cost in a beautiful setting.
My team is showing me photos off the screen here of Montenegro. Excited. Actually, and it's funny. My father, who's almost 80, has been planning a trip to Montenegro, and I didn't know why he wanted to go to Montenegro. I mean, he's well ahead of the curve.
He's a forward thinker.
My father is a forward thinker. He is. Well, I appreciate having you guys on. I think anyone that's considered looking at this, and I always say, I talk a lot about this in finance and just in general. I mean, I think the idea that someone could go to your website, get the newsletter, and just, even if they've had an inkling to do this, just to start to gather information and to learn. And I always say, get as much information as you can, and it'll help you make a decision, but don't close a door on something that could be really exciting and interesting. And I think the world's really changing for people. People are, want to live in different places. They're not so stuck to their land. And so I think what you guys are doing is really fascinating. So I appreciate your time, Leif and Kathleen, and Live and Invest Overseas website will be there. Wealth of knowledge. And I think I'm going to check out Montenegro. Actually, I'm going to talk to my wife about that because my dad's been talking about it. I want to get into it. Anyone that wants to get for more information, check out their website, learn about this exciting opportunity, and get ready, pack your bags. The world is open, and there's places you can live now all over the world that are exciting and can offer a lot of new opportunities, new people, new culture, new food. It's just fascinating. So thank you so much for coming. Self-Made Millionaire Tips, Colin Plume, and we'll see you on the next one.